Welcome back to our special coverage of the U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear capabilities. New pictures this morning of two enormous signs displayed along Tel Aviv's main highway, thanking President Trump for his decisive move to strike the three Iranian nuclear sites. The signs stating simply, "Thank you, Mr. President." Let's bring in Janatan Sayeh right now, research analyst at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Janatan, we appreciate you joining us. We heard earlier from our correspondent in Tel Aviv regarding Israeli officials doing their absolute best to get the word out to the people of Iran about possible strikes that might impact them. That message, though, Janatan, harder to get out without the internet. What's the latest from Iran State TV and why they cut off internet access for the people?
As you mentioned, Israelis have certainly accelerated their messaging campaigns towards Iranians, and it goes beyond just rhetoric coming from Prime Minister Netanyahu himself. Specifically, IDF in Persian account has been very proactively talking to the Iranian people, one, letting them know that this war is against the regime itself and not the Iranian people, which has been well received by Iranians themselves. But a very interesting tactic actually used by the Israelis is that they were able to hack into the state broadcasting, the official state broadcasting of Iran, and they were able to intercept a live airing from the Iranians themselves and broadcast different videos from the protest waves across Iran and letting them know that this is their time to rise up. Now, regarding your question as to why the regime is currently shutting down the internet or engaging in internet throttling, that is because they perhaps anticipate widespread domestic backlash against their policies. You know, from the Iranian people's perspective, this was a war that was imposed on them by the regime in Tehran, and they don't necessarily see the Islamic Republic defending their national interests.
Now, we continue to hear about a regime change. That phrase over the weekend everywhere. The message very clear, though, from both Israel and the U.S. about not wanting to take out the regime, but to take out Iran's nuclear program. But, Janatan, what are we looking at if a regime change did take place? Where would it start with the people of Iran, those who want peace?
Specifically in the Iranian context, when we mention the word regime change, it is more accurate to characterize it as regime collapse, because on the economic front, of course, inflation is soaring and prices are increasing every day. Unemployment continues to be an issue. The rial has depreciated in value significantly against the US dollar. Of course, Iranians, especially the youth, you're talking about a population that's majority under 30. They have access roughly to Instagram. Of course, they struggle to connect to internet here and there, but ultimately, they have an eye towards the West. They see the values that we have here in America and in Europe, so they aspire to achieve that. The only challenge that Western politicians perhaps perceive when it comes to the Iranian context is a potential era of chaos. Now, we have the opposition here in Washington, D.C. that has reassured policymakers that if that were to happen, you wouldn't see a situation like Libya, for example, that there is no governance system, because, again, Iranians tend to be very patriotic, very nationalistic. The national identity in Iran is a very, very ancient concept to Iranians. But as we move forward with this campaign, it's very interesting to see whether Israel will continue to target these repression centers across Iran that are directly involved in quashing civil discontent inside the country.
All right, great insight as the world waits for the next big move. Janatan Sayeh, thank you for joining us.